She left to find herself. But the way she did it was by running into the arms of another man. Not just once. And when everything fell apart, she came back, standing at his door in the rain, begging for forgiveness. But he didn't hold her. Instead, he said just one sentence, and it left her frozen. What do you think he said? Stick with this story. I promise you won't regret a single second of it. That town had one main road, 3 corner stores, 1 fire station, and a winter that never showed mercy. January in Colorado cuts to the bone, the wind howling over rooftops like someone screaming from somewhere far away. And yet, in all that cold, what left Omar speechless wasn't the weather. Omar was a firefighter, a quiet, principled man who lived like everything had a right order, and things only made sense when they followed it. He didn't smoke, didn't get drunk, didn't mess around. His life was split cleanly into parts: work, love, keep your word. He wasn't perfect, but the people around him believed he was the kind of man you could count on. Arya, his girlfriend of 5 years, was the opposite note in that song. She was a freelance photographer, chasing unstable frames, living like the wind, full of color, restless, always searching for something new. She talked about light the way others talked about feelings, and saw life as a string of motion that had to be captured in just the right moment. They were drawn to each other because of that difference. Omar saw in Arya a rebellious spark he never let himself show. Arya saw in him a steady ground she thought she'd need after all her endless wandering. But even the strongest pull reaches a point of saturation. It started with Arya coming home late without texting. Then came the social gatherings where she showed up alone because Omar was on night shift. She began using words like suffocating, trapped, uninspired when talking about their life together. Omar heard it all but didn't react, not because he didn't care, but because he believed if someone truly loves you, they'll speak their truth before they walk away. Until that night. Wind screamed outside the window. The cabin was warm, lit with soft yellow light, dinner still on the table, plates untouched in the sink. Arya stood up, didn't look at him, and said it like she was announcing she was switching shampoo brands. I feel lost in my own life. I need to find myself. Omar looked up, fingers still sticky with sauce. A second of silence passed. Then he set his napkin down on the table, slowly, like he was weighing a battlefield command. If there's something you need to find, then go find it, he said. But don't come back if you still don't know what you want. No raised voice, no begging, no cruel words, just one sentence. Cold as steel, clear as an order. Arya stood still for a few seconds. Maybe she thought he'd get angry, or plead, or at least ask why. But Omar just looked at her, not with fire, not with ice, just emptiness. He helped her pack. No rushing, no panic. The coats she left behind after each trip, the photo album full of unprinted shots, the necklace that once broke and he quietly fixed, all folded, all placed carefully into a black suitcase. Where will you go? He asked as he zipped it shut. I'll start in Santa Fe for a few weeks. Then maybe somewhere by the ocean. I need light. Omar didn't answer. He just walked her to the door and opened the old wooden frame. Snow had started to fall, early flakes melting the moment they touched the ground. Arya turned to face him for the first time since the conversation began. She asked quietly, "Aren't you going to ask anything? If you had the answers, you wouldn't be leaving." And then she walked away. No goodbye kiss, no glance back. People on the outside said Omar was good at enduring things. Family said he was too cold. But no one knew better than he did. You can't hold on to someone who's already let go. He cleared the table, did the dishes, fed the fire, and went to bed alone, like it had been routine for a while now. But what Omar didn't know was this. The journey Arya was about to take wasn't about finding herself. Not the way she claimed. It wasn't meditation. It wasn't journaling. It wasn't healing. It was nights spent in the arms of another man. The hugs, the dinners, the kisses, all labeled by her as freedom, experience, a test of the self. Omar had no idea her journey was a string of betrayals, dressed up as liberation. And sometimes, what destroys love isn't the first betrayal. It's how casually someone treats it like a right they're entitled to explore. 3 weeks after Arya left town, Omar stuck to his routine. Up at 5 a.m., run around the lake, eggs and oats for breakfast, then off to the fire station. He told no one she was gone, let alone why. If anyone asked, He'd just give a faint smile. She needed some time. Then he'd go back to work like nothing had changed. But what Arya was doing out there was a whole different world. She started moving from place to place, Santa Fe, then Albuquerque, and all the way to Sedona, telling everyone she was searching for new creative inspiration. She rented wooden cabins in the woods, attended photography workshops, and shared her philosophy of mental minimalism with strangers. But not a single word was sent to Omar. One of Omar's friends, Brandon, happened to pass by a photo exhibit in New Mexico where Arya was showcasing a series called Rewilding the Heart. Brandon wasn't into photography, but he spotted Arya instantly, not because she was standing alone, but because she wasn't. She had her arm wrapped around a man in a leather jacket, tattoos snaking from his wrist all the way up his neck. Brandon told Omar about it one afternoon while they were checking a water pipe at the station. "I saw her," Brandon said. "Didn't look like someone trying to find herself. Looked more like someone real comfortable with someone new." Omar just nodded. He didn't ask questions, didn't sigh, didn't break. He just wiped his hands on a rag and tightened the valve. But that night, he didn't sleep all the way through. The first man, according to what Brandon found out, was named Ethan, a tattoo artist from Santa Fe. Ethan had once posed shirtless in one of Arya's photo projects 2 years ago. They had worked together, but never went public about anything between them. Now, they didn't need to. They were living together in a makeshift cabin on the edge of town. A week later, Arya showed up on the travel blog of Max, a well-known travel blogger famous for his wild lifestyle and boundary-pushing retreats. In a series of photos taken in the Arizona desert, Arya lay beside a campfire, hair messy, eyes distant, while Max sat next to her, laughing like the world belonged to just the two of them. People who knew her started to whisper. Some said Arya was really finding herself by sleeping with other free spirits. Others were more cutting. Not sure if she's finding herself or just testing who can make her forget Omar. Omar heard all of it secondhand. One person texted. Another casually mentioned it. At one point, a coworker even joked, "Is she trying to hit all 50 states before she comes back?" Omar just smiled. No reaction, no comment. He still showed up to work on time, still brought breakfast sandwiches for the crew, still the first to jump into action when the fire alarm rang. Arya was different now. She was using the word freedom like a passport, a pass to cross every line. The photo she sent to friends carried one loud message: "I'm living my best life." In the pictures, she was riding horses across sand dunes, meditating on cliff edges, hugging her new boyfriend's dog, or standing on rocky ledges at sunset, like she was finally becoming who she was always meant to be. But the truth was, the farther she went, the more lost she felt. That truth hit even harder when someone from the firehouse, a guy named Jackson, accidentally dropped a piece of information Omar wasn't expecting. Jackson had gone to high school with Arya. They weren't close, but close enough to recognize each other. At a random meetup in Denver, Jackson saw Arya show up with yet another guy. Not Ethan, not Max, someone new. 2 weeks, 3 guys, Jackson said. "I'm not judging, but if she's out there finding herself, sounds like she's losing track of who that self even is." Omar didn't say anything, but for the first time in all that time, he sat alone after his shift, took off his helmet, and let his hands rest quietly on his knees for a long while, like he was weighing everything all over again. He didn't blame her. He didn't blame the men. But one thing had become painfully clear. Arya didn't leave to find herself. She left to see if anyone else could make her heart beat harder than Omar did. And maybe that was the real loss. Not that she chose to leave, but that she turned love into a test. And he was just one of the variables. Spring wind in Colorado still cuts like winter. The sky darkens early, the streets grow quiet, with only the yellow glow from the firehouse spilling onto the damp asphalt. Omar had just wrapped a 14-hour shift, a bit of soot still on his shoulder from a small fire north of town. He pulled off his gloves, stepped outside for air, and froze. Arya was standing there, just a few steps from the firehouse door. Her hands were buried deep in her coat pockets, shoulders curled against the cold, hair messy, face pale without makeup, eyes dark and sunken like someone who hadn't truly slept in weeks. She didn't look like the girl who had left him chasing freedom. She looked like someone who had just woken from a long dream and realized she was completely lost. Omar said nothing. Neither did she. Only when he walked closer did her eyes lift. She spoke first. "I know, showing up like this is too late, but I just wanted to talk." He nodded and led her to the bench by the side wall where the crew usually went to smoke. Arya sat first. He sat a good distance away, not cold but clear. Clear enough that she wouldn't mistake this for a fresh start. Wind hissed through the cracks in the wall. Neither spoke for a few minutes. Finally, Arya broke the silence, her voice small, uneven. "The places I went, the people I met, the things I thought were freedom, they left me with nothing but emptiness." She looked down at her hands. They trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from something far heavier. "I thought I needed space, needed challenges, needed to live the life I thought I missed," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But the farther I went, the more hollow I felt. It was like I was running, but not even sure what I was running from." Omar listened. No nod, no reaction, just steady eyes fixed on her. "And then I remembered," she went on, "that there was someone who was there, who stayed by me even when I was at my worst. When I didn't know who I was, you stayed." For the first time that evening, her eyes reddened. But she didn't cry. Not the kind of crying that spills out, the kind you clamp your jaw to hold back so it doesn't swallow you whole. "Only after losing you," she said quietly, "did I realize I had everything." Omar didn't move, didn't shift his posture, didn't offer any words to ease her shame. He let her sit with it, because some feelings you have to face on your own. No one else can carry them for you. Finally, he asked, slow and steady, "And what did you find in the others?" A long silence settled between them. She didn't answer right away. She just turned her face, wiped her tears with the back of her hand. There was no answer, because if there had been one, she wouldn't be here, standing in the end-of-season cold, beneath the dim glow of the firehouse light, facing the man she once left behind like he was something replaceable. She had no answer. Just tears. And silence. Arya left the firehouse that night without another word. But less than 2 days later, she came back. This time, not standing out in the cold, but knocking on the door of the wooden cabin where Omar had lived for the past 12 years. He wasn't surprised to see her. He just opened the door, stepped slightly aside, not inviting her in, but not stopping her either. Arya stood on the threshold, eyes lowered, holding a small bag like she'd just passed through her past and brought a piece of it with her. "I'm just asking for one chance," she said, "to rebuild from the beginning." Omar looked at her, no expression, no anger, a moment of silence. Then a small nod, not in agreement, but letting her go on. "I know I was wrong," she said. "I chased illusions. I kept thinking I needed more. But the truth is, I only needed one person who never left." She paused. "You." Omar crossed his arms over his chest, his voice calm, steady. "You want to rebuild from the beginning?" Omar said. "Then where exactly do you plan to start?" "I'm ready to start everything over," Arya replied, eyes locked on his. "From the smallest things. I'll slow down, settle down. I want to come back to the life we had." He looked at her for a long time, not like he was thinking of what to say, but like he was trying to figure out if she even understood the weight of her own words. "No one can rebuild a house," he said, "if the foundation's already rotted." The words dropped into the space between them, heavier than any outright rejection. Arya froze. 1 second, then 2. She pressed her lips together, holding back whatever instinctive reaction almost slipped out. She didn't wait for him to say more. But Omar wasn't done. He turned and stepped inside, returning with a small wooden box. He set it gently on the doorstep. "These are some things you left behind," he said. "Your old film camera, a few notebooks, that silver necklace you asked me to fix. Call it what's still intact." Arya looked at the box, then looked at him. She didn't bend down. She didn't reach for it. "So those 5 years meant nothing to you?" Her voice trembled. Omar stayed quiet for a moment, then answered, soft but final. "They meant everything, but you buried them with your own choices." That sentence carried no blame, no bitterness. It felt more like an obituary, formal, clean, and final. Arya couldn't hold her composure anymore. She turned away, hurried off the porch like she needed to escape the weight in her own chest. But that night, the messages started coming. The first one, "I can't believe I just lost you." An hour later, "I was wrong, but I still love you." Then, "Omar, Please answer. I can't take it if I've lost you forever. Omar read them. Didn't delete, but didn't reply either. He quietly flipped his phone face down on the table, went back to drying the kitchen counter, checking the heater, and rearranging the bookshelf. The next day, the messages got longer. Then came the calls. Every time the phone rang and her name lit up on the screen, Omar would glance at it, then press silent. Not out of anger, but because he knew, if he picked up now, he'd soften. And this time, he couldn't let himself be wrong again. Arya shifted from pleading to panic. The messages turned desperate. I'm lost. I don't know where to go anymore. Then, there's no one here. Please, just one call. But Omar stayed silent, not out of cruelty, but because he finally understood. Forgiving her now wouldn't be salvation. It would be betraying himself. Omar didn't look back, because he knew that this time, forgiveness would mean betraying himself. The messages Arya sent went unanswered, not because Omar wasn't reading them, but because he had made a clear choice to step out of the space where she once existed. But she remained there, quietly watching the void grow wider in her life. Then the rumors started. Canceled exhibits at the last minute, job offers quietly withdrawn over concerns about personal image. One gallery that had signed her dropped the contract completely after the manager discovered she had been involved with 2 different artists during the same retreat. No one said it outright, but the whispers behind her back were more than enough. The world of freedom she once ran toward had quietly shut its doors. Some of the men who once walked beside her, the ones who'd appeared in desert snapshots, lakeside selfies, and cozy camping shots, had now vanished without a trace. Max quietly unfollowed her. Ethan deleted every photo of them from his portfolio. The third, Mason, flat out refused to answer any questions about Arya when approached by a small outlet. The network that once lifted her up had turned to stone. People avoided her name like a stain they didn't want to be associated with. Friends who once admired her for her bold and fearless lifestyle now quietly deleted old messages, unfollowed her, and stopped answering her calls. One old friend, Layla, finally said it straight after weeks of silence. No one's saying it out loud, but they're tired, Layla texted. No one wants to get pulled into your emotional chaos anymore. They supported you because they thought you were brave. Now, most of them feel like they were used for a self-pity narrative. It was Layla who finally told him. The one thing that made Omar pause, lawnmower still humming behind the house. Arya's staying in a short-term rental on the south side of the city, she said. She can't afford a long lease anymore. I don't think she has anywhere else to go. Omar didn't ask for details, didn't press. But that night, he quietly opened the wooden box that held every photo of the 2 of them from the last 5 years and burned them, not out of hatred, but because the only thing left in those pictures was the memory of someone who no longer existed in the present. Arya, meanwhile, was still trying to find her way back. She asked Layla to reach out to Omar. Layla refused. She sent a letter through a mutual friend at the fire station. It ended up stuffed in a drawer, unread. She sent a photo of the silver necklace he once fixed. No reply. She was knocking on every door that once felt familiar, and all she heard in return was silence. Meanwhile, Omar's life was shifting in ways no one expected. He redid the entire house, took down the cream-colored curtains Arya once picked and replaced them with dark blackout panels, painted the walls from soft gray to deep blue. The old leather sofa, gone, replaced with a hardwood bench-style set. Less cozy, more solid. The pendant light Arya loved, the one she said spread light like emotion, was taken down. In its place, a simple wall-mounted lamp. Not because he hated those things, but because every item reminded him of someone who once said she'd never leave. He refused to live inside memory anymore. Every corner, every hallway, now belonged to him. No more traces of who used to be there. Only quiet. And that quiet no longer felt empty. One afternoon, driving past the animal rescue center near the Eastern Ridge, Omar pulled over during a heavy rainstorm. While waiting out the weather, he noticed a small dog curled up in a corner cage. Droopy ears, soaked fur, barely moving. The manager said it had been left behind 2 weeks earlier. No one wants him, she said. Too quiet, doesn't warm up to people. Omar stared at it for a long moment. Then, without thinking, he smiled. Arya had always been against getting a dog. She said they made the house dirty, caused trouble, made life feel tied down. Omar hadn't argued then, but now he signed the adoption papers for the nameless little dog without hesitation. He named him Ember. Only what once burned, he told the shelter staff, leaves behind an ember. From the day Ember came home, Omar started waking earlier, walking longer, talking more, even if it was just to a creature that never talked back. Ember never spoke, but he stayed, loyal, quiet, asking for nothing, never needing Omar to be anything other than himself. The person who once meant everything to him now meant nothing, and somehow that didn't feel like a loss at all. Rain had been falling since the afternoon. Not heavy, just steady and bone cold. The kind of rain that makes people rethink every decision they've ever made. Omar was organizing his woodworking tools in the garage when he heard the knock. No one knocked on his door at that hour. He wiped his hands with a cloth and walked to the front. When he opened it, there was Arya, soaked to the skin, hair plastered to her forehead, eyes blurred by rain, or maybe tears. No coat, no umbrella. Just standing there, fists clenched, lips trembling like she'd been holding something in all winter. Omar wasn't surprised, but he wasn't moved either. He looked at her, not with resentment, not with anger. Just the look of someone who once loved deeply, and now felt nothing at all. Arya spoke first, voice raw and low. "I don't want anything. I'm not here to ask you to take me back. I just want, just once, to be forgiven." Omar stood still for a moment, then tilted his head slightly. "I forgive you." A flicker of hope flashed in her eyes, but it was extinguished instantly by what he said next. "But there's no place for you in my life anymore." Arya froze, breath catching like someone jolted from a dream they didn't want to leave. She took a step back, then suddenly collapsed onto the porch, hands bracing against the wet tiles, eyes fixed on the ground. "I have nothing left," she whispered. "No job, no friends, no future. I don't even know who I am anymore." Omar watched her for a long moment. He didn't move closer, didn't kneel, didn't offer a hand like he had all those other times she stumbled before. He just said calmly, "That was your choice." Not an accusation, not cruelty, just the truth. She stayed silent. The light rain turned heavier, soaking the porch until the stones shimmered with cold. Omar stood for a moment longer. Then, without a word, he slowly closed the door. The dark wooden frame shut without a sound. No slam, no screech, just the wind whispering gently behind him. This time, he didn't close the door out of anger. He did it for peace. 3 days later, Omar packed 3 changes of clothes, a multi-tool, a compact tent, and some dried food into a backpack. He called Ember over, ran a hand over the little dog's head, and left him with the neighbor for a few days. No one asked where he was going. They didn't need to. Everyone knew. Omar wasn't the kind of man who left to escape. He left to move forward. He drove north, toward the Rockies. On the first day, he hiked past a rocky slope he knew well. The same one he once brought Arya to. Back in their first year together. She had complained about the cold that day, wanted to turn back. But now, Omar crossed it alone. No complaints, no hesitation, no turning back. That first night, Omar set up camp beside a small lake. No cell signal, no voices. Only the crackle of fire and the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. Calm, unshaken. The next morning, as sunlight touched the snow-covered peaks, he stood on a rocky ledge and took a long, deep breath. No thoughts in his mind, no weight on his chest. Just himself. Whole, steady, and finally free from the things that once made him question whether he was ever enough. Sometimes, your true self isn't found in the places you pass through, but in the place you're brave enough not to return to. Everyone has the right to go searching for who they are, but no one has the right to make someone else their stopover while they experiment with being lost. True freedom doesn't come from walking away from stability. It comes from knowing what's worth staying for. Arya went searching for answers, and in the process lost the one person who never once questioned her worth. As for Omar, he didn't win. He didn't lose. He simply chose not to walk back into the place that once broke him. And sometimes, that's the clearest sign someone has truly grown. What about you? If it were you, would you open that door again? Or would you choose to let go, to protect your own peace? If this story made you think, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a wake-up call. Because sometimes, what we need most isn't someone who comes back, but the courage to keep moving forward.